Mike Pereira, this is last call. We're going to talk about a lot of plays, a lot of interesting things to talk about. We've got tweets that we get all the time. I want to see this tweet here. Dean Blandino, read it. It's you.
So I get a lot of tweets. Mike does too. But there's one segment of fans that have really taken a liking to me recently, and that's the Lions fandom. Dean Blandino, you're kind of a blank. Sincerely, Lions fan.
And
what is the blank? We can't really. It starts with a B.
It ends with an H.
It ends with an H, and yeah, exactly. So
I wrote that. How'd you like that? I wrote that tweet and said I was a Lions fan. But
why are they upset with me? Well, let's take a look at Matthew Stafford. Right, drops back to pass, brings the hand forward with control, starts to bring the ball back to his body, and then loses it. On the field, ruled an incomplete pass. Went to review, reversed to a fumble. Was that the right call?
Absolutely was the right call because of the fact that even though it took a long time to change, when you go back to the Raiders-Patriots in 2001, it was at that point an incomplete pass, the legendary tuck
That's
play.
the tuck rule.
But the rule has changed now to where if you have stopped your forward motion and you're bringing the ball back towards your body and it comes loose, it's what everybody thought it was in 2001. A fumble.
It only took 16 years to get it right.
I know. I did try, but.
But again, properly ruled in replay and clear recovery by Detroit. Big loss of yardage on that play. So big shift in field position.
Well, here you go again. Here's another tweet. Look at this. I didn't think I could hate anyone more than Mike Burr, but I do. And it's you, Dean.
I love hashtag Detroit versus everybody. Everybody. And now I'm serious. I just want to take a minute and I want to basically reach out to the fans of Detroit and I want to make up with Detroit. This goes back to the 2014 wild card game where there was a flag for defensive holding, an announcement, and then the flag was picked up after the announcement went against Detroit against the Cowboys. Goes back with you, Calvin Johnson, right?
Right, 2010.
But again, I feel like, Detroit and I haven't been seeing eye to eye, and I think we hear each other, but we don't listen. We really don't listen to each other. So I want to extend the olive branch. Fernando, can you give me a little bit of music, and we're going to talk about why I love Detroit, okay? Here we go. 1959, Berry Gordy starts Motown Records. Where? Detroit, Michigan. Home of Eminem, 8 Mile, one of the greatest rappers of all time. True Romance. If you haven't seen this movie, it takes place in Detroit, Michigan. Great cast, Christian Slater, Patricia Arquette, Dennis Hopper, and others. It's the potato chip capital of the world. Of the world. It has more registered bowlers than anywhere in the United States. The home of the oldest ginger ale company in the country, Vernon's. I love ginger ale, and it's the second largest theater district in the United States, second only to New York City. I love Detroit. Detroit, let's make peace. Let's move forward together here.
Well, then make the big commitment. You live in Santa Monica, California. You gonna move to Detroit, Michigan, since you love Detroit?
I'm gonna do like a snowbird or reverse snowbird thing, where I'll go to Detroit in the summer and come here for the winter.
Well, I got news for you. If Detroit fans, they don't like you. I don't think Dallas likes you that much anyways, but we'll talk about that later. Let's talk replay serious for a second here. In Arizona, we had a play on the sideline in the end zone that was ruled on the field as a touchdown. It's really a great play. Andre Ellington's catch looked like it was really close, might be incomplete, but he gets toes down when he hits the ground out of bounds. He's got possession of the ball. He holds on. Sam Rosen, David Deal, myself on air. We all thought that it was clearly a completed pass and a touchdown as called, but it was reversed to incomplete because as Ellington brought the ball into his body, it looked like maybe his hand might have come off of it, maybe. But boy, to me, it's not enough to overturn. And I get really concerned when you are the person that developed the language of clear and obvious. When you start taking those type of plays and overturning that to incomplete, I think that's crazy.
Well, it is. In replay, you think about the evolution of replay, and it started with a small set of plays that were reviewable, and you're trying to fix big mistakes. Not everything, because there's going to be mistakes that happen during the game that we're just not going to stop the game for 2 minutes to fix. But big plays, and the standard was indisputable, right? It's got to be obvious. It has to jump out. And if we start, as technology has gotten better with HD and 4K and all of these different things, if we're going to analyze these plays to the nth degree, that's not the basic premise and philosophy of replay. Make it jump out. And if we're going to look at maybe that ball moved in his hand, there was a slight turn of the laces, and that's why we're overturning the call, that's not the idea behind replay. I would agree with you. Make it jump out. It's got to be obvious to everybody, right? Mike Holmgren used the old adage, 50 guys in a bar, right? If they can agree, it depends on where the bar is, but if they can agree, then the call should be overturned.
What if the bar's in Detroit? If
the bar's in Detroit, well, Detroit has great bars too. Greektown, unbelievable.
Well, again, and then you had to play later on in that game, which was in an overtime period. The question was the foot on the sideline or not. Couldn't tell. They stayed with it, which they should have. But to me, they're starting to get a little too technical. And again, you got new people making decisions in New York. You were the one that was making them.
And obviously,
before.
This tweet, smart guy, Sean Erb.
You got to be kidding me. Never thought I'd speak these words, but the NFL needs Blandino back. Horrible day for New York with challenges. Where did that come from? Really came out of the Matt Ryan play with Buffalo. This is a huge play, 3rd and 9 play, ruled on the field as a fumble and picked up by Buffalo in return for a touchdown, I believe. So huge play. It's a pass as far as I'm concerned. Hands going forward with control of the ball. This is one to me, and we had one similar in the Philly-Washington game with Cousins. That was ruled a fumble, and we thought that should have been an incomplete pass. You know, to me, hands on the ball, fingers on the ball, laces never move on the fingers at all. To me, there's enough to reverse that.
Yeah, and I think you and I differ a little bit on this play, and we talked about it yesterday. I'm more in the camp of, to me, there's some doubt. He gets hit, the ball starts to turn, looks like it starts to come loose just before the hand comes forward, and he's more pushing the loose ball. I like this as a stance, is what they did, but it's not consistent with the Arizona decision. And I think when you go to centralized replay and you bring a small group together, that's the goal, to be consistent. You may make a mistake, and I know I made mistakes, you made mistakes, but at least you're consistent in your line of thinking. And if you're overturning the Arizona play based on getting very technical and analytical, but leaving the Buffalo-Atlanta play, that's not consistent.
What mistakes did I make? What?
You basically, you hired me, right? You gave me a lot of options,
that is true. The power struggle at Fox between Dean Blandino and Mike. Who?
Yeah, exactly. So who's winning the power struggle, guys? Okay, exactly.
I think it would sound better Pereira and Blandina.
Can't even spell your name right.
Really, that is pretty sad. That is. Thanks a lot. It's great to see that. Hey, catch, no catch. Again, catch, no catch. Antonio Brown. I mean, this was all over on Twitter yesterday. You know, this was ruled on the field as a catch and down. It is not a catch. You have the 3 elements which we have to talk about again, which is control, 2 feet, and time. Everybody wants to equate time with steps. Mm-hmm. It doesn't equate to steps. If you're going to the ground, before you clearly become a runner, then you have to hold on to the ball when you hit the ground. And people are having a hard time understanding. They tweet after tweet says, but he had the ball and took 3 steps. Well, guess what? He didn't become a runner. So they actually reversed it to a catch and an interception because the ball ended up being intercepted by Baltimore. But, you know, we're almost to the point where I say, if you're a fan watching the game,
start that it's incomplete.
Start with the fact that when the ball comes out, and then work backwards.
Work your way back.
Work your way backwards to see if he's become a runner, because these are becoming, whether it's the Sterling play or whatever it was from the week before, these are becoming on the field now and in replay that if they're going to be going to the ground at all close, you got to hold on.
You got to hold on. I always say survive the ground. If the ball comes out, start that it's incomplete, work your way back. Don't count feet. Don't get into any of that. He's got to become a runner while he's upright. If he does, and he has control of 2 feet plus time to become a runner, then he can go to the ground, lose the football, and it would still not be an incomplete pass. But this is something, I think people understand the rule. I think a lot of people just don't like it.
No, I think they, I get that they don't like it, but I think they have a hard time. Everybody wants to equate steps, which you can't do when you're going to the ground. I thought it was interesting, if you're going to play football in London, you almost have to expect that there's going to be some issues, and there were some technology issues there in the coach to player system. So you've got coach to defense, you have that, you have coach to the quarterback also. So they had issues with that not working, and what they did was, since they had problems before the game, they just basically shut down both teams' communication system to the players. Then in the first quarter, they got back working again. And so both teams had them, and then at that point, there is no rule of equity. So even after that point, if one team would have lost the use of their system, the other team still could have used theirs. And we always talk about rules of equity. This is one that doesn't have a rule of equity in game, but there are some rule of equity issues that they do have.
And there's different communication components, and I was at the first London game at Wembley in 2007, and talk about an undertaking where you basically have a soccer stadium used for concerts and other things, and trying to play American football there. And so the game operations department has done an unbelievable job. But obviously they had issues yesterday. But you have coach to player system, which we just talked about, coach to quarterback and coach to defense. You have coach to coach, which is the wireless and the wired headset. If those go down, like you said, before the game and they're not operational, then neither team can start. But once we start the game, if one sideline has any of their components working, even one headset, then the other team is not affected. If it's a total system failure, so let's say Miami had lost all of their coaches' headsets, both wired and wireless, then New Orleans would have to shut theirs down, even in the game. So there's different rules of equity as they apply to the different components. But again, the NFL has a lot of rules as it applies to this, because it's so competitive. And teams will say, hey, I can't communicate to my quarterback. Why are they allowed to do that? And so you have to write rules to make sure that.
And are they really being honest, saying that they can't hear theirs? You know, so and I know that's one of the issues.
Well, you have a cutoff operator, right? The cutoff switch. You have somebody that's at 15 seconds is actually shutting that, either the snap or 15 seconds on the play clock is shutting that communication down. And you have to make sure that that person's doing it, not giving the quarterback an extra couple of seconds.
I mean, the override. We did hear about that. I heard about that in my time in some cases in some stadiums where it didn't work at opportune times for one team. But
okay, let's go to another tweet. Tony Dungy, and this has been a topic that is getting a lot of traction. Not a fan of the offensive pass interference calls right now, and he's not sure what the NFL office is telling these refs, that these aren't fouls. Well, I can tell you what the NFL office is telling these refs, because I was doing it as recently as last season. Offensive pass interference is a point of emphasis. Hands down, this is going to be a point of emphasis. The passing game is important to the league, the success of the league, the excitement of the league. When you talk about downfield contact, whether it's illegal contact, defensive holding, pass interference, it's all connected. And OPI is going to be a point of emphasis. And it's a tough call, though. It's a tough call to make. Sometimes you have two officials involved. But whether you're blocking downfield, whether it's a pick route, officials are going to strictly enforce these fouls.
But there's more emphasis to me on the offensive pass interference. You can say that illegal contact is a point of emphasis and defensive holdings, but the numbers don't pan out for illegal contact like it does on offensive pass interference. But everybody knows it's a point of emphasis. I had a coach tell me that they got a video from the league that had 4 plays on it that was all about offensive pass interference. And you're right, it is difficult, especially when it comes to like the picks that occur at the line of scrimmage, because the guy that may have the responsibility for calling that could be 20 yards downfield. So it's hard to pick up exactly where that pick occurs.
Or who's initiating the contact? Yeah. Is it the defensive back, or is it the receiver initiating the contact?
Yeah, it's a tough play. I've always said interference both ways. Toughest call that you have to make on the field. We always sometimes focus on the bad calls, and you never focus on the really good calls. And you know, I'm never one that says that one call affects the outcome of a game, but Dean, here was a big one in a game that you were watching yesterday.
Yeah, these are big calls, and we see so many good calls during the game and game-changing calls. This is hands to the face on San Diego 93. You can see the defensive tackle puts his left hand up to the basically the neck, head neck area, and pins that head back. That's a foul. That was a third down stop, third and goal stop that ended up being a first down, an automatic first down. Philly scored a touchdown. That basically iced the game, but a big call, and that's what we always say. We want the teams to decide the outcome of the games, but when there's a foul like that, you've got to make that call, whether it's with 3 minutes to go in the first quarter or 30 seconds to go in the fourth quarter.
And that is true, and we've always said that. There's so many myths out there as to refs put the flags deeper in their pockets when it's at the end of the game. All of that stuff, makeup calls, another great myth. We know that from being on the inside, but that was a huge call and a right call.
No question, no question. Danny Trevathan, obviously Thursday night, I think we all just reacted to that hit. It was just such a jarring scene in terms of receiver stacked up, his progress is stopped. Trevathan comes in, hits him helmet to helmet. Flag was thrown, a lot of discussion. Should he have been ejected? Is this going to lead to a suspension? Well, we know now he's been suspended 2 games, right? So do you think that that's the right thing? Talk a little bit about ejection on the field and how difficult that is.
Yeah, listen, I think he should have been ejected. No question. I think anytime you have something, a play that leads to a 2-game suspension, that really, to me, on the field, it should have been an ejection. How to get to that point, I don't know, because it's not easy on the field. John Hussey is actually the only official that made this call. He came in from a position that he didn't have the best look, and yet he was the one that threw the flag, so at least they got a flag. I do think there were other people that had better looks at it, but, you know, to me, he had to be ejected, and you have to figure out a way. And then you have a communication system right now that you can talk to anybody, you can talk to replay, you can talk to New York, you can talk to anybody. Somebody's got to get, even when you've got a down player laying on the ground like that,
sure,
somebody's got to whisper in the ear of Hussey to say, hey, eject the player, get him out of there. It was a vicious enough hit. You worry about retaliation after that point too. So I think replay somehow maybe needs to get involved in these horribly egregious calls. And, you know, when you've got these egregious, flagrant hits, maybe replay needs to actually make sure that what needs to be done and who needs to be ejected gets ejected.
There's no question, and it's much easier when you have the benefit of slow motion replay to make these decisions, and that, you know, kind of leads us into our next topic, what the NCAA does with the targeting rule. And so I think we both think the concept is a good concept. It's a good rule. We're just not sure if it's being applied consistently across the country. And I think the coordinators and Rogers Redding are working really hard to get that consistency. But right now we've had a lot of just discussion about targeting. Because you do have the replay component, but players are being ejected, and we both looked at plays where we felt that the players should have stayed in the game, and they didn't.
Well, the numbers are interesting, because you take a look at the numbers, and through the first 4 weeks of the season, I think there were 70 plays that ended up being confirmed as targeting versus 48 the year before at the same time period. And I think what you're getting here in college is you're getting instruction from the coordinators are saying, hey, if it is a high hit, go ahead and throw the flag and let replay undo it if it's actually not targeting. But when you make a call, you set a standard, and that standard is that you're right. And, you know, this targeting rule, this is, you know, you're talking about playing 12 games, and you're talking about a 4-year time if a player plays for all 4 years. An ejection for a half or longer, or the first half of the next game, is a big deal. And I think that somehow the NFL needs to look at what the colleges are doing and use it for only the most egregious of calls, the most flagrant hits. I think somehow, you know, they could come up with something.
I think it's stopping the game if you think college can create targeting now, right, in replay, which leads to an ejection. If the replay official or New York feels like there is a flagrant hit that should be at least considered for an ejection, that they stop the game and they look at it, and they review it. We're not going to look at, again, you can't review every foul during the game. It's too cumbersome. But when you're talking about player safety and you're talking about ejecting a player, potentially in the first quarter, I think there needs to be a replay component to it.
And I think it's simple. If it's called on the field, for a hit on a defenseless player, then I think replay could automatically look at it and throw in the ejection component if they think it rises to that. Because what happened on Thursday night shouldn't have happened. Well, let's see. We're going to go to social media question. What does the NFL say to officials who blow inadvertent whistles? What did you say to officials who blew?
I'd say keep that bleep and whistle in your pocket. No. So inadvertent whistle, what's an inadvertent whistle?
I don't even know what it is.
Right? And so an inadvertent whistle is a whistle that's blown. An official thinks the play is over, and it really isn't. Right? And a lot of the inadvertent whistles we'd see is the runner goes into a pile and we lose sight of the football and the official blows the whistle. Next thing you know, the runner's running.
It's not inadvertent. He meant to blow it.
Exactly.
He meant to blow it. Why is that inadvertent?
We actually did change the language in the rulebook to erroneous. In the
erroneous.
NFL
I actually, in college, I had one. Fresno State, at the game at Fresno State, I blew it back. I blew the whistle during a fumble. You couldn't correct it. There was no replay there. So inadvertent whistle, that's what they call it. I felt miserable about it. They took me to dinner that night, my crew, and what did they do to make me feel better? Ordered a bottle of I.W. Harper. Any of you young punks been around to remember I.W. Harper? It was a whiskey, I.W. Harper whiskey, and we had to drown my sorrows in I.W. Harper whiskey.
Are you done? Are you done?
Eminem, who's that? I thought Eminem was a pizza.
Can we go to the next tweet?
What's your opinion of the 10-second runoff rule? Should it be eliminated? Hashtag one pride.
Detroit.
Huh? One pride Detroit.
No.
Well, go ahead.
Look, it's a good rule. The idea is that you're giving a team an additional snap that they would not be entitled to. And we understand that it's a mistake by the officials, but if you're truly trying to get it right, then the 10-second runoff rule is a good rule. It was instituted for false starts inside of a minute, now 2 minutes, because what you're saying is you're gaining an advantage by not getting lined up properly prior to the snap, and you're able to snap the ball quicker than you normally would. And so I think it's a good rule. It's going to go against certain teams in certain situations, but I always look at the flip side. If without that rule, and Atlanta's sitting there in that game saying, hey, they shouldn't have gotten another snap, and now they score on the next play. So.
Yeah, and I think, look at this. If you have a timeout, you can save the 10 seconds. The real danger is when the team doesn't have a timeout, and that's when they really gain the advantage. College needs to look at it too, because in the NFL, injuries can create a 10-second runoff. College, they can't. And there becomes an issue of feigning an injury of some kind. But
I think they are moving toward that because they're charging timeouts and they're doing different things.
Dean Blandino and Mike Pereira still waiting your assessment of the King 55T terrible penalty for roughing the passer.
That's the Burfict play. We looked at it yesterday and we both agreed that we didn't feel, at least from the angles that we saw, we didn't think it was roughing the passer.
I mean, he didn't lift and drive his whole body weight down on top of him. People said it's a reputation foul. I don't think it's a reputation foul. These guys probably hadn't worked Burfict all year long, as a matter of fact. So, but you know, you protect the passer, you take the extra step to protect the passer. But to me, Burfict didn't do anything wrong. I don't think, although you're the fine guy, I don't think it will result.
I'd be surprised if that results in any kind of discipline.
Yeah, you know, you actually think that, you know, it's pretty amazing here when you watch. Actually, Dean Blandino actually loves Detroit guys. He really does.
I can feel the love. I'm going to go to LAX right now. I'm getting on a flight to Detroit, and we're all going out.
I know Robert Tomlinson. He lives actually in Santa Monica next to Dean, so he doesn't live.
It's actually
live
my cousin.
Detroit. I was humored. College Game Day. I don't know if you saw this on College Game Day. Look at this sign between Lee Corso. This is live on television. Dabo Sweeney, after he showers. This is live on the. Well, you think that Detroit fans don't like you? I saw this sign in Dallas. Well, look at this sign. Dean Blandino. This is what they think of you in Dallas, for God's sake. So, you know what I do next week? Learn about Dallas a little bit. Des Bryant, the catch. Learn about that. Tell us all the things about Dallas that you love about Dallas.
That's not true, by the way. That's not true.
Did you get that sign? Did you get it when you came off the bus? Is that what it was?
Yeah,
Jerry
Dallas,
we'll
make up with Dallas, and I want to have a little more fun with Cowboys fans before we make up. So
hey, we're done. There's nothing more for us this week. Last call every Monday right about 1 o'clock. We break down the big calls. We try to have a little fun. We try to teach, and we'll see you next week at 1 o'clock Pacific.
See you next week.